From unexpected brawls to betting scandals, the UFC has seen its fair share of controversies over the years, all of which have affected the company's reputation in one way or another. The UFC boss, Dana White, is no exception either. And if the boss could have found himself in such a situation, what's left for the rest? Let's go back in time and recall the most controversial UFC moments in history. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please subscribe and be the force behind our push to 10,000 subscribers. Let's do this. Dana White being a competitor in a slapping contest. The UFC president Dana White had some unusual situation at the 2023 New Year's Eve party in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. The UFC boss and his wife, Ann White, were at a nightclub, and unfortunately things got a bit heated. A video surfaced showing them in a disagreement, and things escalated when Ann did something many UFC fighters want to, but don't have the cojones to do, slapping Dana. Surprising, right? Dana could not let that slide and took a note from Sean Connery's book.
I think it's absolutely right.
To give a good slap.
Yeah, absolutely.
In the heat of the moment, the UFC boss returned the favor, turning it into an incident that sparked a lot of criticism. Now, what made it even more complicated was Dana's previous stance on not tolerating violence against women. People were quick to point out the inconsistency. Many folks were upset and felt there should be consequences, like Dana stepping down or getting fired. Despite letters and petitions circulating urging for action to be taken, nothing changed for Dana White. The controversy stirred up a lot of discussion about accountability and fairness, leaving people questioning the outcomes when someone in the public eye is involved in such incidents. A simple Russian beef with an unexpected twist. Forget about the whole Proper 12 drama that turned them into enemies, as Artem Lobov and Conor McGregor used to be really close friends. Back in 2018, Lobov said some not-so-nice things about Khabib Nurmagomedov in an interview, comparing him unfavorably to McGregor. This upset Nurmagomedov, who, along with some friends, cornered Lobov in a hotel hallway. Things got tense as Khabib threatened Artem before giving him a little slap, while the whole scene was recorded and shared online. So basically, Artem said something Khabib didn't like, and Khabib gave him a slap. End of story. Well, that wasn't the case, as things got complicated. When McGregor saw the video, he got furious. He hopped on his private jet with his friends and flew to New York to deal with the situation. They intercepted a bus leaving the Barclays Center, and that's where things got messy. McGregor and his crew attacked the bus, breaking windows and causing cuts to some of the fighters inside. Even the UFC boss, Dana White, was disgusted by the event and called it an ugly incident. Ultimately, McGregor got arrested in the US for the first time, which made the already intense feud even worse. James Krauss, from fighter to accused informant. Over the years, the UFC and gambling have always been connected. Experts have shown up at events, and you'd see the odds of fighters winning on the screen before the fights. It was never a big deal until 2022. There was a fight between featherweights Derek Minner and Sheerlan Naredanbeek that stirred up a lot of controversy. Minner seemed to hurt his knee early in the match, and Naredanbeek took advantage, eventually stopping him with some elbow strikes. But here's where it gets tricky. Just hours before the fight, people noticed some fishy betting stuff, especially bets on Minner losing in the first round. An investigation started, and Minner ended up getting let go from his contract with the UFC. The UFC released a statement about the whole thing, and the key player was James Krauss, a former fighter turned coach. Krauss, who also ran a Discord server and a YouTube show about gambling, was accused of leaking info about Minner's knee injury before the fight. This led to a bunch of bets on Naredanbeek winning. The Nevada State Athletic Commission suspended Krauss's coaching license, and the UFC said fighters working with him should cut ties or risk being let go, just like Minner. Even though the decision kind of closed the case, it didn't stop the controversy. Some media even pointed fingers at the UFC, saying they should have stricter rules about gambling among their athletes. We don't know if this is the last betting scandal for the UFC, but it definitely was the messiest one in 2022. Jon Joness' roller coaster, unexpected change of venue. In 2017, Jon Joness had a bit of a rough ending. He won the light heavyweight title by beating Daniel Cormier, but this victory turned into a bittersweet moment for Bones, or more bitter than sweet. His victory was overturned because he tested positive for a substance called turinabol, which is a type of performance-enhancing drug. When he came back to fight Alexander Gustafsson for the title, they were supposed to have the match in Las Vegas at UFC 232, but there was a small amount of turinabol still in Jones' system, and the people in charge in Nevada didn't want to let him fight. So they moved the whole event to Los Angeles, where they said it was okay for Jones to fight. This caused a lot of arguments and raised eyebrows. A reporter named Isabel Kostick asked Jones about it, to which he didn't respond very classy. Brazilian booze and object hurling. Covington's controversial transformation. Back in 2017, Colby Covington was about to get kicked out of the UFC because the organization was not interested in renewing his contract due to his boring fighting style. At least that's Colby's side of the story. Even though he had won 4 fights in a row, he felt like he was on the chopping block. Before his fight with Demian Maia in Brazil, the crowd there wasn't too friendly. They even threw stuff at him and were chanting in Portuguese that he was going to die. But guess what? Covington had the last laugh as he won the fight against Maia. And after the win, he went on the mic and didn't hold anything back about the country of Brazil, calling it a dump. He also called Brazilian friends filthy animals, which got a lot of people upset, especially Brazilian fighters in the UFC. This controversial moment got everyone talking and marked the start of Covington's bad guy character. He was next granted a shot at the interim UFC title and won the belt against Rafael dos Anjos and put that belt on Donald Trump's desk in the White House. Speaking of an unexpected turn of events. Hunt's anger, filing a lawsuit against the UFC. Brock Lesnar made a comeback at UFC 200, where he locked horns with the heavyweight hitter Mark Hunt. The striker had no answer for Lesnar's takedowns and lost that fight on the judges' scores. Even though Lesnar initially won, the result later changed to be a no contest because he tested positive for a banned substance. Lesnar failed a drug test for a substance called clomiphene, and the rumor has it that he tested positive before the fight and was still allowed to enter the octagon. Hunt believed that the American got special treatment, skipping the usual 4 months of mandatory drug testing for returning athletes, which was like a free pass from USADA. The Super Samoan was pissed about this, so he filed a lawsuit against the UFC, accusing them of letting Lesnar fight, knowing he was using banned substances. The CM Punk experiment. Back in December 2014, the UFC dropped some big news that had the MMA world buzzing. It's funny because years later, Dana White would say that the UFC doesn't do gimmicks. But here's the twist. They signed pro wrestling star CM Punk to a fancy multi-year contract. Now this announcement caused quite a controversy. See, the UFC had been trying to keep things real and not look too much like the scripted world of WWE. Bringing in CM Punk, who had zero experience in martial arts or combat sports, didn't sit well with anyone. The funny part, you had fighters like Ben Askren, who were undefeated, not getting a warm welcome because some folks thought their fighting style was boring. UFC is full of surprises, isn't it? Did the UFC plan UFC 279's final outcome all along? In September 2022, UFC 279 turned out to be one wild ride, and the main card was nothing like what everyone expected. First off, there was a lot of controversy around the main event. They matched up the up-and-coming Khamzat Chimaev with the battle-tested vet Nate Diaz, who was in the last fight of his contract. People thought the UFC wanted Diaz to leave with a big defeat and build Khamzat off on a legend's name. But guess what? The Chimaev vs. Diaz fight didn't happen. Before the fight, there was a big mess at the pre-fight press conference. Chimaev, Nate, and Kevin Holland got into a backstage brawl, along with their teammates and coaches. It was so crazy that Dana White decided to cancel the whole press conference, something the UFC had never done before. Then to add to the chaos, Chimaev came in at 178.5 pounds, way over the limit for the welterweight class. No surprise, Diaz said he didn't want to fight someone much bigger. So everything got switched around overnight. Diaz ended up facing Tony Ferguson, Khamzat fought against Holland, and Li Jinyong and Daniel Rodriguez stepped up to face each other. The fights delivered in the end, but people couldn't stop talking about whether the UFC had planned the whole thing from the beginning. UFC 229's unforgettable chaos. Before their massive fight for the lightweight title at UFC 229, there was a lot of bad blood between Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov. McGregor took the trash talk to a whole new level by targeting Khabib's religion, family, and political connections while the Russian kept his composure. When the fight finally happened and Khabib submitted McGregor, everyone thought things would calm down. I mean, it was total domination, and Khabib shut McGregor down convincingly. But nope, the performance itself didn't satisfy Khabib's appetite enough, so he jumped out of the cage and went after Dylan Dennis, who was in Conor's corner. This started a big brawl, and it got even worse when Khabib's teammates joined in and attacked McGregor. Security had to step in to break things up, but Dana White, probably worried about a riot, didn't even put the lightweight title on Khabib. Instead, he sent the Russian backstage right away. Both fighters got fined and faced consequences for their actions. It was one of the craziest and most controversial endings to a UFC fight. Yes, brawls happen in other sports too, right? But when you have a bunch of dudes with cauliflower ears starting to exchange punches, that's a different level of brawl. Thank you for tuning in, fight fans, and we can't wait to see you in the next one.